Hey Jesse, how are you?
Hi JF, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, I've made it no secret that I'm in love with this car.
Oh, thank you.
A couple personal reasons. I love the 61 Chevys for one, and the Phantom wagons, well, you know I'm a fan of those.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. Started up with smoothing out the lines of the 61 and everything, and lengthening the hood, and cleaning up the cowl area on this thing, and the backs of the fenders, you know, on these, the hood lines and all, they'll make some weird angles and so forth, so we tried modernizing that and getting a modern flair in it, and so making them a sport wagon out of this. You know, back in the early 60s they had a lot of utilitarian type wagons, so we figured, what if they had a sport one with a big engine, manual transmission, and you know, something that might have a little more of a spirited drive, but you can still use it.
Still follows GM's idea from the 50s of the Nomads, is what I'm thinking,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and so we thought, well, what if they maybe floating around in a concept back room of GM, let's play around with some of our newer models after the Tri-5 era and see what we come up with. And they pulled some of those styling cues, maybe some of the more modern styling cues that they had from GM, maybe they were thinking about, like hidden wipers under the hood and so forth, that come in some of the later models. The motor is a real 409, base coat, clear coat, the block, everything slicked and painted with a Glazeret 90 line.
And I see that that's a satin finish, which I really like on an engine. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a 55 line that we're using with them, and then the gloss is actually the 460 clear over top of it, but the base coat is the same, and it's the same color on both of them. So.
What I like is the way that once you've painted it with the satin clear, everything just looks that much smoother.
Yeah, it's just a nice, soft visual texture on the motor, and it's a nice complement to the shine on the car. With running the block, we've had this car running quite a bit actually. The durability is there, and the product we're putting on it and everything else. So it's a good complement to all of those hours put into prior to the top coating on it. So
I really like your consistent detail work here with the sheet metal under the hood.
Thank you. That was a pattern we wanted to follow, and it goes kind of underneath the car as well, and it turns into like a square, offset square detail around between the frame rails and so forth under the car. Just a little visual treatment to smooth out some of it.
But the idea of how tricky it is to just taper the line from a flush into a reveal and then flush again, make them all line up. That's
a lot of control with the Pullmax and bead rollers and all that stuff in the sheet metal. On the interior of the car, we pride ourselves with trying to match the leather and the sheen whenever we paint the pieces. So these pieces are all sheet metal pieces that have all been painted, and part of the dash is, but yet that cove is covered in leather.
Wow.
And so we wanted to have a real consistent sheen match to the leather versus the paint, and so it's kind of flawless, and you don't see that difference in those. So
it does blend super.
And the Glazeret helps us get that done as well. So with their 55 clear.
This is the kind of detail that not everybody in our industry can achieve.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with all the little details, from the little fender spears being lit up, and I have a lot of fun with lighting and billet pieces that stack up, or acrylic pieces we've machined or 3D printed, and have just a lot of different processes that were afforded to our industry now that makes it a lot easier.
It's a true story.
And so, man, it kind of opened up this big world where we can run with it.
And testing ourselves.
Exactly, yeah.
Every time something like that comes along and you can incorporate it into a great build, and we sure build better product.
It's consistently a challenge to not have one item better or worse than the other items that we put on the car. So you have this nice consistent flow to what's happening from front to back on the car, or top to bottom.
So tell me a little more about this.
Yeah, we've taken the chassis, box-shaped chassis. It started out as in Morrison. It's been heavily modified from art stuff, and only to. It's been not for the functionality of it, but for the visual aspect of it. So, you know, we just want to clean it up, and again, it falls in that realm of not stopping on one spot or another. So we try and make it consistent, and as you do in your builds too. I mean, it's just that consistency there lets it flow, and it doesn't draw your eye to one thing that may stand out. So,
and yet there isn't a detail about this car that hasn't been addressed.
Yeah,
everything looks perfect.
Yeah, you kind of detail every part as you're showing that one piece, and then you bolt it on as a whole, and then it becomes a whole, and you're ready to hopefully go to the show.
It's nice that you made it sound that simple, but to be realistic, how many times do you figure we disassemble and reassemble a car to get that fitment to this quality? 40 times, 50
Sometimes hundreds.
Right, hundreds.
Sometimes you put a wheel in and take it out.
You just haven't lost track of your attention to detail, though. It's absolutely stunning on every level. This piece is completely hand-built. This is something that didn't exist in the car.
All this piece, again, keeping the GM flair. So we took the stock back glass out of a 61 bubble top and just moved it back to the hatch. And then, again, pulling some cues from the, the Nomads and so forth. And putting those in there and then hand fabricating all this back hatch, and the whole back end of the car has all been reworked as well. To be able to get a nice profile to the car.
Wow.
And the glass that we're using is all tempered safety glass. It's all marked. This car is licensed to ready. We could drive it out of here and go home.
No kidding.
And if we didn't want to hurt it with all the road salt. But
I bet there's not a lot of grade 8 cars that can say
no. And huge hurdle for us to get over, but that was a big request of Joe's. Joe Horace being the owner, and tackled that for him. So
made it a priority, really.
That's right. Yeah.
Totally different ends of car building all in one place. I see a lot of body work, metal panels that have been painted. I see leather, so it's an upholstery guy. I see machining. I mean, these to anybody else would look like a normal piece, but when you see the taper at the very end of it and how much work went into that kind of little detail, it's beautiful how you've just amalgamated everything together.
And we tried to keep a consistent visually with all the crowns of the seats and the crown of the dash, and looking all the way forward, and then the shape of the gas neck and all the way to the front. We've tried to plan and think out visually everything that goes into the car.
Yeah, your fit and finish is second to none. People think that black cars are the hardest to paint. And I'm always the guy to say, you know what? That's an old rule. I think white cars are the absolute hardest.
They are.
Getting color match is near impossible. If you have one little speck of dust fall into one of those layers of paint or in the clear, you can't color sand that out. It's going to show up. And this car looks absolutely perfect. So
thank you.
How did that go?
Well, it's like you say, it's a struggle. I mean, we have lighting banks in our shop to buff with, as you probably do.
Right.
And we wheel them up to the car. With it being white, it's hard to see stuff in it. So whenever we're rubbing, we have to move lights, change lights, maybe move positions in the shop.
Turn the car around.
Lights.
We've had to do that, yeah.
And then you're constantly sanding and rubbing to get to make sure you're past the orange peel, and then buffing it from there. So
what clear did you use to get to the point where a car is this shiny?
This is the Glazeret 460, and we'll probably put more on than the typical body shop would, or a repair shop, and so then we have room to sand that back and get
the buff it back.
Buffing part of it, yes.
Do you think most people get how hard that is to do?
No.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Jesse talking with us about the car. I'll tell you what, that is another killer car from Greening Automotive.